Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session
with your host, Michael Rearden.
Welcome, Deborah Heiser, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, no problem. Today, we're going to be talking about your work, developmental psychologist. And I'm excited to dive into that because psychology is a love of mine. And it's a passion of mine. You mentioned my guitar behind me, and the guitar is a passion, or was maybe a passion, but psychology has always been a passion and still is a passion of mine. So I'm so excited to dive into your work. If you could, can you tell the audience who you are, what you do, and how you help?
Sure. My name is Deborah Heiser, and I'm an applied developmental psychologist. I'm the CEO of the Mentor Project, and I'm the author of the Mentorship Edge. So I, as a psychologist, study aging and mentorship. And so I wear a couple of different hats.
Okay, well, let's look at the Mentor Project first.
Sure.
What is that?
So it's an organization that most people think, oh, how does that relate to aging or psychology? It's an organization that came about because I was meeting with people who were mentors, and they kept saying they had a hard time finding mentees. And these were the top 1% in their field. And I thought, there's something wrong. So anyway, we started the Mentor Project with just a couple of people. Bill Cheswick, who's one of the fathers of the firewall, was one of the first people who said, I really want to get in front of kids. I'm going to be retiring and I don't have access to kids in an appropriate way. You can't go to a park and say, hey, kid, want a mentor? So we thought of, let's get a way to get Bill and a couple of other people who mentioned that they thought that would be a fun idea in front of school kids. And we thought it would just be about 10 of us doing what we were doing. And everyone told us it would never work, that people who are really successful don't have time to give back, that it's beneath them in some ways and things like that. But there's a developmental psychology theory that says we're built to give back in midlife. And the stage is called generativity. So I thought, well, let's see if this works. We'll just see. If it doesn't, it doesn't. No big deal. Well, within 6 months of when we incorporated as a nonprofit, we went from 10 people to 60 mentors, then to 80 mentors, and then to 100 within a year. It was insane. Everybody wanted to give back. We were really able to show that the top 1% and everyone else in between wants to give back because they want to feel relevant and useful and that they matter. So the organization is bringing these experts to students around the world for free. And it's in one-on-one mentorship, it's in groups, it's in programs that we offer. And so last year, we gave away $3 million in mentorship hours to students in 5 countries. And it really just shows that stage, that psychology, those theories really do hold.
Very true. I remember one of my mentors, he was retiring from General Electric, or it was General Motor. And he had all the time in the world. He's, getting ready to turn 65. He's like, they made me retire. I didn't want to retire. So he's spending time with me, answering questions. It's just like, you would think like a man this busy and a man who charges so much per hour, like, why was he spending time with a 20-year-old something, me, helping me grow? And it was very close to what you said, it was like they want to give back. And he was helping so many people. It wasn't just me. And I know many people, they struggle to find good mentors or just the idea of mentorship at a young age, especially in schools, because when we think of schools, there's not many programs that, students can dive into with someone and learn from them. It's more of, okay, let's go to school, let's learn the curriculum. Eventually, you might do some extracurricular activities like a basketball team, volleyball team, soccer team, et cetera. But that is the extent of your coaching experience or your mentorship experience. And I find that if someone can come in from different walks of life, because maybe someone is thinking of being an accountant or something, right? Mm-hmm. And they can speak to that accountant who's now at the edge of retirement or maybe already retired. And they can say, this is what I did, and this is what I had in my life. So now they can use some forward perception and saying, hey, this is what I want, or this is not what I want. Because some people, they kind of fall into a job, maybe because they think it's going to bring them a lot of money. Maybe they think it's going to bring them joy. or some type of level of happiness, but is not necessarily their passion. And the people who work for you are definitely passionate about what they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it.
Mhm.
And so my question is the idea of passion. How do these mentors instill passion within the young minds?
Well, I look at mentorship, there is something about mentorship that is the mentor is coming to it with their own passion. It's mentor driven, it's mentor focused. So the real thing is we want to make sure that somebody's matching that understands that passion and can grab onto that. So if a mentor has to focus and say, I must, instill a passion in somebody, it's probably not a good relationship or good fit. So we know when that happens, when you meet somebody and you're like, wow, they get me. That's what we're really looking for. If there's not the passion match, we don't say, hey, go try to elevate your passion level and get that person passionate. We say, hey, maybe they need somebody else. And that is not saying there's a failed mentorship. It's saying it just wasn't a match. So we try to match people up with as many people as we can, because there are often times I didn't know I was going to become a psychologist. I didn't even know what one was when I was a kid. Sometimes it takes seeing or meeting somebody and they have that passion that you say, I didn't even know that was out there. I want that, even if you're on a path, or they can, really inspire you in a new way with what you're doing. I think that, to be quite honest, the passion has to be there from both of them. And it shouldn't be a burden on the mentor to make a match that isn't, starting out as a match.
Yeah, we're living in a world, though, it's very interesting, where our passions are almost shunned, where
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, you like that. Oh, I can't believe you like that. So then it's almost like you're embarrassed to be passionate about something, because maybe you're passionate about something like collecting stamps. And this doesn't sound fun or exuberant, but then you find so much joy in it. But the moment you tell someone, they make fun of you, they bully you, right? I'm thinking of school, but maybe even in adult life, right? So our passions are almost hidden in a sense because we are too afraid to show them to the world. And I know when someone is passionate and they find someone else who's passionate, they can, trust in one another. That they can have that
Yeah.
confidence, and they can say, "Hey, I know I can open up to you." But when it comes to outside of just this relationship of mentor mentee, how can I present my passions to the world? Unacquainted with other people's ideals and self doubts that they want to portray on me.
I would say this. Here's what mentorship is as a definition, because I think that passion is in that. Because, like, I saw your guitars and I was like, wow, that is very cool. Like, I could see a mentor or mentee seeing just something in the background and saying, wow, that's my person or whatever. Or if somebody saw, I like pickleball, if I had pickleball stuff up, they might say, wow, I can see that, because you can feel that passion with the other person. But if I were to look at mentorship, there's really 5 things that go into it. And this is part of looking at all the research and the development that's out there in psychology. First, it has to start with a mentor feeling generative. Like you had a mentor that you talked about, and that person wanted to give his expertise to you. And I bet he was passionate about doing that. And you, I can hear it in your voice, were passionate about receiving it. You were like, yes, this is what I was looking for. Wow. That's what starts it, is that you're generating something from you and giving it out to somebody. But there has to be somebody to catch it. And that person has to feel your passion and say, that's what I want. And then it has to be intrinsic. So if you're getting paid to mentor, you're not a mentor. You could be a coach, you could be a guide, an advisor, whatever. And that doesn't devalue anything. You should have a coach and you should have mentors. There's room for everything. But it's like if I were to say, hey, Michael, do you want to go to a soup kitchen and give out food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people? You might say, yeah, I'd feel good about that. I want to do that. I know I'm not getting paid. But then imagine I call you and I say, I know you're on the way to that soup kitchen, but just turn left and go volunteer your time at Starbucks. You'd be like, ew, like that doesn't feel the same. I'm giving out food and beverage to people, but I expect to get paid at Starbucks. So if you're an employer, if you're working in a company and somebody's like, you need to be a mentor, that feels like Starbucks instead of going to the soup kitchen, and that removes that good feeling from it. You also need to be meaningfully connected. I might have the same passion. Maybe I like guitars too, But then you and I just don't have that. We don't kick it off. Then that's okay. It's just not mentoring. The next thing is it has to be that you trust the person. If I come in and I'm the mentee and you're the mentor, and you're like, I have a feeling Debbie's going to steal my idea and run away and start her own company. I don't trust her. Then, the mentee, the mentor, the mentee, I would also have to say, you know what? If I tell Michael I don't know something and then he judges me and says, you know what? I don't want to give her a raise. Or I just feel like, ooh, I respect him so much. And if he finds out I don't know something, he'll think less of me. We have to have that trust. And finally, a goal. So if you have all of those things, that is a ball of passion that's happening. It's a ball that just rolls on its own and just takes off. But if you miss one of those ingredients, it's the same as if you bake brownies and leave out the sugar. And it'll look like it, but it won't taste like it. So that's really when we look at mentorship and we see programs that start them and they assign people and they're not like, why doesn't it work? Or a person has to check it off that they're a mentor or a mentee. It starts to feel like a burden as opposed to a real, great, passionate relationship.
You brought up the word trust, and it's such a common word, but it's such a complex word in the same right, because when it comes to trust, we might trust our kid to, like a teacher, right, from a daycare or something, because that's, what other people are doing. So we say, oh, other people are doing it, so it seems okay. This person has some level of experience, might even be their first year, so maybe they have no experience. But you say, okay, I'm going to trust this teacher, right? But you won't trust your kid with, the guy at the park, saying, hey, do you need a mentor or something, right?
Yeah.
So now we have to get into the idea of trust and, how is that trust formed? So like quickly, because if we just say, okay, it's a good match, we have passions, but trust is one of those things where maybe a person needs more time with trust. I know, for example, Connecticut and Texas. You and I talked a little bit before. I lived in Connecticut before. And in Connecticut, the personalities are very different than Texas. The level of approachisness, like in Connecticut, you don't go up to anyone in Connecticut and try to talk to them because let me tell you, they want to be kept and left alone. Now, if you know them by some means, by some friends, then of course you can interject. But if they're at Starbucks having a coffee, you better let them sit and have their coffee by themselves. All right. Depending on age. But in Texas, it does not matter what age, where you are. You can go up to anybody and start talking to them. When I first came to Texas, everyone was trying to talk to me. And I'm thinking in my mind, because I'm from Connecticut, what do they want from me? I don't trust this person.
Yeah.
So it took some time for me to get acclimated to the weather of Texas, of the people, the personalities. And now like the trust I have for people is kind of like, you're my friend. Like, I don't even know you. I just met you today, like 10 minutes ago. I trust you. But in Connecticut, it's like, I got to wait a little bit. So it's very different to trust. And I wanted to get into the idea or the conversation of trust and how is that built with a mentor and mentee?
It's just like anything, a friend. And I actually have a funny story. I'm originally from the Midwest. And my dad came to visit me in New York. I lived in the city and he was talking to everybody in the elevator, all the way up and all the way down. I was like, Dad, you can't do that here.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just talk to everybody. And he was like, what are you talking about? Anyway, it is different where you go and what the rules are. It's just like, you don't go up to anybody and say, hey, want to be my friend? That's weird, right? So you don't go up immediately and say to somebody, be my mentor or let me mentor you. So really what it is I like to tell people we have to stop thinking of mentorship as a hierarchical thing. That is not the way it works in the world in general, is the way that we say, oh my gosh, I better go find a mentor. And then I look and I say, okay, good. Can you be my mentor? If you do that in the real world in Connecticut or in Texas, that's weird. That's just people aren't going to trust you. So I think that when we look at this, we have to look at it from the perspective of who do I already trust? You already have a trusted group. Your mentors are to your left and to your right in your natural life. Our biggest mentorship comes from like grandmas who pass down culture, value, religion, and all that through our families. Nobody remembers the accountant from 300 years ago, but do you remember your religion, your traditions, your values, your family ideals? Those are passed down. That's mentorship. So you trust those people in your life, right? That isn't something you have to go and do. We just don't label it because it's so natural to us. Mentorship is a natural thing. So once you start to get to know somebody, the way you could go and develop trust is you could say, I could go, hey, Michael, I know you're really good at guitar. Can I pick your brain about something to do with guitars? And then I can feel it out. I could say, you know what? He seems like he cares about what I'm saying. And wow, I could really learn so much from him. So I'll develop that more. And that's really how most mentorship happens, whether it's to your left or to your right, or if it's somebody higher above you. So if you're going to work and you're starting in a new job and you say to somebody who's 2 levels above you, I really need to know the lay of the land. Would you mind showing me that? That's much different than saying, you and me, we're hooked for life. This is, an arranged marriage now from this point forward. That feels like a burden. And so we're built to naturally find our mentors and just do this naturally. So take that, I would say, trust. You know how to trust. Everybody does. And you know who you already trust. Just take that one and touch your toe in the water, ask a question, see if that trust starts to build, and then go forward. Mentorship usually isn't okay, set it and forget it after, the first interaction.
Trust, as much as I would love to, be optimistic about trust, there are people in the world who just do not trust because they come from so much trauma and so much hardship. I grew up in the ghetto, and the people you trusted were the people from your block. If they weren't from your block, you didn't trust them. It's that simple. If someone was new, you questioned it. And again, it goes to the idea of, where you are and who you can trust. And in Texas, the trust is almost passed out like Halloween candy on Halloween Day, where it's just like everyone gets some.
You know what, though? It is. But you better not break that trust. It's passed out, but you also better not break that trust. So if it's like it is in other places, people will say, I'm going to give this to you, but you better not run off and steal it, whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? And that's implicit in that. And sorry, I didn't mean to cut in with that.
You and I are just having a conversation, so feel free to butt in if something calls you.
Yeah, so I think that it isn't cheapened in Texas, that trust. It's not cheaper there. It's earned the same way. It's just delivered differently. Like where you grew up in Connecticut, I'm sure that you trusted people and that people could trust you. It just was delivered differently. That the way that was delivered, that's how I see it, having lived in 2 different places with different expressions, but same out.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. But again, just from being here for time, 28 years in Connecticut is very different in the sense of how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like I'm going to just do it versus let me be cautious. And going back to my earlier question with the caution, with the passion, people are cautious about being passionate. And this is how we kind of got into this loop of trust and passion and trying to get to the root of what I'm looking for is you have to trust yourself, but then you also have to trust the people that you're going to be instilling something in. And you said something really good about you have to trust them because you don't want to tell someone something and they steal it.
Yeah.
So many people, they will just kind of keep shut about inventions or ideas because they feel as if maybe they are not adequate or that someone's going to steal them. But, like they have patents and everything like that. And I was watching a video of Elon Musk and he says something about patents. He goes, no, I don't have any patents or something, which I don't believe is true. I'm sure he has some patents, but he was talking about like patents are just a slower way of doing these things because you're so worried about someone coming in and trying to take your things. And he's like, you just have to keep on going. So if someone steals whatever you have, you create something else, something better. So it's just a different way of viewing it. But the majority of people, if I had to lump people together, I would say they're very concerned about being passionate and expressing themselves to people because they don't want to be judged. And this happens, from the teenage years when they're developing and they're trying to have that acceptance of everyone else around them, their peers, typically not their parents. But they're like, what do I have to do to be accepted? Well, everyone else is doing this, so I guess I should do this. They say that these are the nerds for reading books and playing a trumpet and playing the guitar. You're a nerd if you do that. I don't want to be a nerd, right? I don't want to be identified as that. So I'm going to take my passion for music and I'm going to hide it away and I'm going to put it in a corner. And, like the question is now is like, how can a mentor, how can someone see that in a person saying, hey, I see you're hiding something. I see that you have something else that you're too afraid to show to yourself or to the world, whoever, how can they pull that out and say, it's okay to be unafraid?
The way that I would say that is, I'll give an example of Justin Thompson. He's an artist he's gone for 2 years to Tanzania, to a small town, to teach cartooning and how you do emotion in cartooning. And he goes to middle schoolers. Middle schoolers are notorious for not wanting to talk to anybody. Like if you're in the middle school years, you are just wanting to blend. That's when you don't raise your hand, you don't look up, you don't smile. I'm not going to interact with the teacher. I'll be seen as some kind of, loser. I'm not going to do that. So he went there and, had to understand. What he did was he essentially went in and just did his thing. And then he let them feel him out because they needed to see, can I trust him? So at the end of the week, everybody was like, oh my gosh, this is great. I trust you. Now he went to Brooklyn, to Flatbush, and he did the same exact thing with kids there. And he called me the first day and he was like, oh my gosh, these kids hate me. And I was like, really? You're so fun. Everybody loves you. And he was like, yeah, they're head down. They're not doing anything. I was like, these are middle schoolers. Like I had to talk this mentor off the ledge in a way because he was so freaked out. And I was like, isn't that what happened in Tanzania? Like middle schoolers are middle schoolers. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. And then by the end of the week, you should see the stuff these kids produced. It was unbelievable. And then they're smiling and they all have this art and they needed to see that they could, come out of their shell in front of their friends. It wasn't that they needed to trust him. It was that they needed to trust that their friends weren't going to be like, oh my gosh, can you see that, she or he is doing that? Or that they're trying hard. Kids in middle school don't want people to see them trying, all of that. And then they got to see that. And the stuff they made was unreal. So it took a week, though, of that. By the end of the week, I really think that a mentor's job is just to say, here's who I am. Here's what I have. And when that person can see that nothing bad is going to happen when they expose themselves, show their vulnerability, then that match can happen. But they really don't have to come in and do anything. I think that might scare them off even more.
Middle school is definitely those tough years.
Yeah.
I know when I started teaching, it was actually in middle school. I taught some elementary stuff, swimming and stuff. But when I got a teaching position, it was in middle school. And I was like, okay, let me do the same thing I was always doing. And nope, you can't. It's very different. You can teach elementary and high school, no problem. Walk in the park. Middle school, we got some problems. You have to learn how to move in those middle schools. But once you learn to adapt and you understand their mindset, it's a walk in the park. Getting into the idea of mentorship is so powerful. And I'm surprised that more people don't tap into mentors and getting mentors who talk the talk and walk the walk. It's almost it's like, people just kind of think like, I'm going to do it by myself, like I'm just a lone warrior. I'm going to do it with my group of friends, maybe, right? They don't really seek wisdom, right? But there has to be an edge to mentorship. And I know you wrote a book, The Mentorship Edge. What is that edge?
That edge is that it can save your life. It can be something that changes your life. I'll give you 2 examples of what the edge is. Imagine it's 2003 and you're watching the Columbia Space Shuttle re-enter Earth's orbit and it disintegrates. Everyone who was watching was horrified. 2 years later, up goes another mission. Imagine you're the astronaut. You're looking around and you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is everything I ever thought it would be. I love it. It's even better. And then you get a call from Mission Control and they're like, hey, you might have the same problem the other one had. And you can't open the door and say, I'm out of here, right? What do? Well, Charlie Camarda, who's one of our mentors, is the astronaut who was on the STS-114 that followed that, the fateful Columbia mission. And he was like, oh my gosh, I don't trust work. They just called me and said, I don't know if you have a problem or not. So he's not thinking, oh, I trust my workplace. Now what does he do? He's up in the middle of the in space. There's nobody else. So what he did was he brought his little black book with him to space, and he called from space a friend of his who knew the engineering better than anybody else. And he said, hey, am I going to have to call my daughter? He was a single dad taking care of his 9-year-old daughter. Am I going to have to call her and tell her I'm not coming home? Or can this be fixed? So this person mentored him through. He said, here's what you are going to have to do to get home. You're going to have to call Mission Control and tell them you need to do a spacewalk. And that way you can fix the tiny little tile that's broken. And this has been on CNN that showed what this was. It was like a teeny tiny little tile that caused the explosion or disintegration on reentry to Earth's atmosphere. So Charlie called his boss and said, hey guys, I'm going to have somebody go do a spacewalk. And they made it home safely. That person that saved his life was his mentor. Most people think because it's lateral that it's not a mentor. His boss at work, who was hierarchical, was not his mentor. He didn't trust him. He was like, no, that guy is okay with me not making it home. But his friend knew something different and taught it to him while he was in space so he could come home. So mentorship is all around us. So what does it do for it? It can save our lives. Another story is there's a guy named Steve, and he was at work, and his boss said to him, I have a task for you, and it's an impossibly short amount of time, and it's really hard. You got to do it. And Steve says, don't worry about it. I got it. He didn't know what he was doing. He got as far as he could, but how many people have ever been there with a teacher or with a boss or whatever, and you're like, don't worry, I got it, because you feel like you can't tell them. Otherwise, you don't feel like you can be vulnerable. So what he did was he got as far as he could. And a few days later, when his boss came in and said, listen, our company could go under if you don't get this job done. So Steve calls his friend Steve and he says, hey, Steve, I got as far as I can. I know you know a different kind of engineering than I do. Can you come help me out? He said, I'll be right there after work. He comes after work. Nobody knows he's there. It's just the two of them. And they start to make progress because Steve is teaching him the kind of engineering he knows. They do this night after night. It's like Rumpelstiltskin. They're spinning wheat into gold every night. And then they finish it a week early. And the boss comes to Steve and he goes, Steve, I can't believe you finished this early. Oh my gosh. And Steve said, I told you I had it. No one ever knew the other Steve came in. But the person that was there was Steve Jobs. He was at Atari, and his boss was Al Alcorn, who's considered the grandfather of video games. The work that they were doing was on Breakout. So if you've ever played a video game, it's because of that launch of Breakout that happened. So Steve, quietly, he didn't get anything. He didn't get paid. Nobody even knew he was there. He was helping his friend. And that was trust. So it can save our job. It can save our life. It can make us feel secure in an insecure situation. What happened with Steve and Steve could have been in school. It could be anywhere. So most often our most powerful mentors are people who are beside us, who get us out of a jam. That is something that we're saying, oh my gosh, I'm not going to make it either in business or in school or in life if I don't have this help. And that's when our mentors come in.
I was thinking, because I know we talked about the idea of like mentorship in the beginning, where the mentors would come to you and they would volunteer their time to say, hey, I'm looking for people to, mentee, or, I'm looking for mentees. And it brought up the idea or the question of, should a student seek a mentor or should a mentor seek a student?
Well, what we do is, first of all, say, if you see somebody that's struggling, offer your help. You're a mentor, right? And that doesn't have to be a student. It could be anybody, but offer your help. If you need help, ask, right? So whether that's to your left or to your right or wherever, it's easier, I think, if a mentor says, here's what my knowledge area is. They make it available. And those people who have that shared passion can say, you're my person. I want you. That way, the burden of creating passion in somebody else is off the mentor, and they don't look like a creeper going after people like, hey, let me share my passion with you. Like, nobody wants that. So it keeps it so that the mentee gets to really go for the person that is offering what they want. And the mentor's job is then just to say, oh, here you go. Here's this nice gift from me to you.
What is your vision for the Mentor Project or just your work in mentorship?
My goal is really to get the word out to people that mentorship is something that we're already doing. Everybody's already a mentor. Everyone is a mentee, and to engage in it more often so that we can all be more connected in a more meaningful way. Whether it's somebody who's right in your household or it's somebody in your neighborhood, start wherever you want to start. But the other thing is that I want the Mentor Project to be able to go from, we gave $3 million of mentorship hours for free to students in 5 countries last year. I want to double that this year. I want to keep increasing this number so that students around the world also get to connect with one another. And so that we can really just have a much more connected world in a better way. I think that that's the developmental psychology theory that I'd like to see applied everywhere.
And how would people get involved with this project?
You know, if you are a student and you want to become a mentee, you just click a button that says become a mentee and off you go. If you're a minor, you need to have a guardian sign it as well, you know, the forms. If you want to become a mentor, you reach out. There's an ask a question button or a contact button, and then someone gets back to you. So you can mentor, volunteer, or engage in philanthropy. And, you know, the sponsorship from the dollars that people give is what gets people to go to Tanzania or to Brooklyn from wherever they're living and do the mentorship in person. So whatever way you want to get involved, just click a button. It's free.
Perfect. And we're going to get into all those links in a minute, but I think it's so important where, you know, like people, they have this access to, you know, say, hey, I'm a student. Hey, I'm a minor. Hey, I'm someone who wants to be a mentor, to do that, because there is so much, you know, so much kindness in the world. And I know, and in the beginning, I might have been a little pessimistic, but I like to be a little bit sometimes when it comes to trying to get some good stuff from the guest, because you have a wide breadth of knowledge and wisdom. You have seen so many different things, and you know so many things. And we do almost an injustice for having a short podcast interview, because you have so much to tell us and so much to share. And so I always tell people, like, you know, this episode, you know, is not only who you are or what you do. It's just the beginning. It's the beginning of the conversation. It's the beginning of the life, right? You said mentorship can save your life. And, you know, this right here can be the beginning of a life-changing moment for you, an epiphany, if you want to call it that, an awakening, you know, and an enlightening thing that's going to say, hey, this is what I need. And it's so powerful. And so, you know, if you could, can you please tell us, you know, like the websites or the social medias where people can, begin the process?
Sure. If you're interested in getting a mentor or learning more about what we do, www.mentorproject.org. That's the Mentor Project. You can reach me. I write for Psychology Today. You can reach me on my website, www.deborahheiser.com. I have a Substack. I'm on LinkedIn, but I do want to, and you can find the Mentorship Edge anywhere you get a book. It's in audiobook, Kindle, hardcover. It's available everywhere you buy books. I wanted to tell you, though, that you are a mentor when you are podcasting. It's a modern form of mentorship. You know, when that term was, you know, brought about originally hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, this is something that they didn't have tech. You have people who are meaningfully connected to you by listening to you. And that is something, they trust what you're saying. They come back time and time again. So you are a modern mentor in what you're doing. So if you are someone who's looking for mentorship, do something like find a podcast like what you are giving here, and try out different kinds of podcasts. See if you trust that person and see if that resonates with you, because that is a form of mentorship.
I agree. One of the reasons why I started the podcast wasn't because I wanted to do podcasts. Like, I didn't even know if I wanted to do podcasts. It was almost an accident. But I said, you know, people are not going to be able to afford coaching sometimes, right? They might be in a rough patch in their life, and they just need some help, right? They just need some guidance, and anyone can come listen to an episode. They can find what they need. They can, reach out for a consultation. I have emails of 18-year-olds and, you know, like people getting ready to go to college, and they're saying, hey, I'm afraid to do this because I don't want to make a mistake. because maybe they don't have funds to go to college. Maybe they might have a scholarship or something. They're afraid to lose it. Maybe they're hanging around the wrong people. I mean, there's so many things that are going on in their mind. And I'm just there saying, hey, like we got to do this, or you have to do this. And you just can't, allow this to impede what you're going to be able to do. You can't be afraid. And so I created the podcast for the people who were afraid, the people who needed help, the boys who don't have fathers, the children who don't have parents or guardian figures or someone that they can trust because they grew up in such a tarnished area and their mind is frazzled and they're just looking for a beacon. They're just looking for a bit. And I know I'm not the only person. So coaching in session is not just me. I'm not the only coach. I'm not the only doctor. I'm not the only psychologist. There's so many people. And that's why I have all these wonderful guests come on, just like yourself, Deborah, and talk about their work, talk about how they help the world, because it is the ripple effect that I hope we're creating here that is going to stand the test of time. Because even if, something, God forbid, happened to me and my son had to figure out how to be a man, right? Sure, my brother might be able to step in. My dad might be able to step in if he's around. And, where is he going to get the information? Of course, he can find a mentor, right? But then he can also tune into these episodes of the podcast. They're going to be there. So he can say, let me listen to that. Let me think about the relationships, because I talk about everything. But he can go back. And I said, this can be any boy. It doesn't have to be my son. It could be any boy. It could be any girl in the world. And so it's so much bigger than just me or, the idea of being a mentor for the people who need it. But I loved our conversation today. And before you go, I wanted to get some final words from you, something that the audience can take away with or like away from, and they can say, wow, like I want to do something. I want to, reach out. I want to make some change in my life today. What would that message be for them?
All you have to do is look to your left and look to your right. You're looking at a mentor or a mentee. You can either help the person next to you or be helped by the person next to you. So look at each person as a resource or someone that you can be a resource for.
Perfect. And it was, I don't know how long ago, probably a couple of years ago, I said, you know what? There is no shame in asking for help. I said, there is no shame. But yet, for some reason, we think we can't ask for help. We have to do everything by ourselves, But the moment you are able to ask for help or become unafraid to, your life just begins to multiply so much more quickly. It's very similar to the story you're telling with Steve. It's like, I can't believe you got it done in this time. It's like, well, we got it done because we worked together.
Yeah.
And that is so important, right? So find someone to work with, work together. Don't think you're this lone warrior on this whole vast earth of 8 billion plus people, right? There's so much magic there's so much magic to happen, and there's so much to be created. So, with that being said, again, all the links are right down below. Reach out to Deborah, continue to see what she's doing, support her, and don't be afraid to be a mentee or a mentor. So thank you, Deborah, for coming on, spending some time, and of course, talking about your work.
Thank you for having me. I was delighted to be here.